if you lack conflict, especially in co-founders, that's not harmony. That's apathy. Welcome everyone to yet another episode of Scaling the Unscalable. I'm here again with Manuel, and today we'll be going to touch upon the topic of starting a business, finding your partner in crime like we are, hiring those first maybe 2, 3, 4 employees. I know that Manuel has tons of experience, which I think it's super valuable for everyone who is in this journey. I also have some experience as well, but yeah. Thank you, Manuel. Thanks a lot for being here this week again.
Always nice. Let's do this.
Perfect. So let's assume you are in a moment where you need to found a new company, a new startup, a new service-based business. And it makes sense to kind of look for a co-founder because nobody is great at doing a lot of things by themselves. So having people who complement each other is always useful. What would be the steps? What would be your, evaluation framework maybe to make sure you are finding the right people? Or what would you do as a first thing?
Well, the first question I think is, do you need a co-founder or do you not need a co-founder? Maybe let's start there. But you have a business idea. You maybe have started a business, do a little bit of revenue. Maybe if it's a service-based business, you should have some kind of revenue. And then you see, okay, I'm lacking certain skills. I would love to have a partner in crime because it can be very lonely if you do this. I love somebody that also pulls the wagon, not just an employee and that you have to pay, but somebody that really wants to shape this into something. So if you have that set up, then you definitely want to go out and you want to look for someone that is not just like not exactly like you, but has some complementary skills. So in a typical, let's say, digital business, maybe even a product business, if you will, but let's distinguish service business and product business. You need 3 roles. Doesn't mean you need 3 people, but you need these three roles somehow covered. You want one person that is really good on stage and that can really sell what you're actually doing.
The hustler, right?
Yeah, the hustler maybe, and that person that just enjoys being on stage. Not everybody does. Just being out there, telling the story, being the networking person, going out, following up, saying hi, going to dinners, that kind of person. That I would call it the salesperson, that person you need. Then if you're building a tech product, you definitely need some kind of tech person. You need somebody that understands technology, understands the newest, the architecture, how to build something that scales. And then you need a role that translates between the two. So that understands, okay, this is what the market needs. This is what is out there. This is what customers need. This is what users need. And then how to translate that into a product. And this is maybe the product person, if you will. So salesperson, product person, and the tech person. This changes if you have a purely service-based business. Then the tech person becomes an operational person. Somebody that is really just a really good operator, thinks in processes. These kinds of things. So now you are there. The first thing is you need to understand who of these people are you. What is it that really comes good to you? Elon Musk is a rare example of somebody that combines all 3 of these people. He goes really deep into tech, really deep into product. He's also quite the salesperson with his own style, but most of the time you don't have all those 3 roles really at a great level within one person. So find out what your strengths are, where you are best for that business, and then you want to start to look for someone that complements that. So you have these 3 roles. Does that make sense as a start?
It does. So the way how I see it, or how I've learned to see it in the past few years, is that people have different skills and founders have also different skills. So you have the entrepreneurial person, who you can also call the salesperson, the guy with a vision or the girl with a vision, the person who leads the company forward. And they're not always great with processes. They're not always great with management. They might not even be a leader. So we have, for example, Mark Zuckerberg's example. They brought in Sheryl Sandberg, if I'm not wrong, to actually babysit
Great
him
example.
because he was great at being an entrepreneur. He had a vision, but he was not a leader at the time. So entrepreneurship, leadership, and management, those are all three different skills. And you can have them if you are gifted enough, but very often you don't have them. So the way how I see it, maybe in simpler terms and not more in roles, but in skills, you need the entrepreneur, the person who sees the gaps in the market, the person who understands what needs to be done in order to actually get better service, who understands the customers, who speaks to the customers. You need a leader, the person who should be followed and who people would love to follow. And you need a manager, the guy or the girl who makes sure that things are run, that things are being done in a certain way. And again, these three skills are very, very different. If I would start a team, be it in product, be it in service, honestly speaking, I would love to have these three skills part of the core team. So not sure how you see it and how do you see the correlation between these three and the roles you mentioned earlier?
Yeah. So I think it's kind of similar. If you think about the entrepreneurial skill, the manager skill is certainly the one that what I said before about COO, somebody just keep the system running, make sure it really runs smoothly. Well. Yes, exactly. All the operations. So basically that the promised service is actually delivered, right? So that person you really need. Often that person with those skills doesn't come with the entrepreneurial, I don't like the word, but vision, if you will, the
openness. Let's call it openness.
Yeah, openness, but also the capability to look 6 to 12 months ahead and to really anticipate what the future might look like and to get an idea to see the holes in the market or where you can position yourself in a certain strategic sense. Exactly. The opportunities is a great word there. So these are often two separate skills, and those let's call them visionaries, or those that are open to accept the future, that they are often not rigorous enough to really have this management capability to follow up on everything, to just be very, very rigorous on process and outcomes and milestones and all
disciplined
of these things. Yeah. So exactly. So they want more. They want to be out there, anticipate the future. You need both. I don't know the details, but from all I've seen or heard from Steve Jobs, he was not the best manager and probably also not the best leader. He had his unique style. If people liked it, they liked it. But he was a really good, visionary. He could anticipate the future. Had this also very detailed. He wanted to get it right. In his own way, but detailed in terms of the outcome, not the process to get to that detail. And if you are a manager and also if you are a leader, you need to be really good at the process, actually. So I also like that. So I like the sales, product, tech kind of person framework. I also like the entrepreneurship, leadership, management framework. You need all of those kind of, and it's just the way you look at it. That will help you identify the gaps. The most important thing then, let's be very specific again. The most important thing is that you understand your own strengths. So question to you is, which of these roles, of the roles you said, which are you good at? And which did you have to learn through your journey of entrepreneurship?
That's an amazing question. Well, I think I started with the entrepreneurship one, with the openness one, with the creativity one. Of course, I wanted to do things in my own way. So when I wanted to do what I wanted to do, that doesn't work. And if you don't shift things fast, then the business won't actually keep running for long. I had to learn the management part. I had to force myself to be a manager, to manage myself first and foremost, and then to be able to manage other people. I'm still not great at it, honestly speaking, but I'm quite decent. And leadership, I've worked a lot on this aspect as well. A few things came natural. So people, for some reason, I don't know why, have always followed me or the idea I had. I believe if you have a vision, then people are kind of drawn to it. So they are kind of correlated to each other. And then you have to be consistent also in leadership, because the first flame is easy to be set up. the first motivation is easy to be set up. But true leadership, in my perspective, is how consistent you are in what you say, in what you do, how consistent you are in going towards that goal or going towards that objective. Consistency, again, as much as discipline, was something that I personally had to learn. So I believe I'm better now in those two topics. But in the beginning, certainly I would have used a Sheryl Sandberg as well. So if we take the Mark Zuckerberg analogy. So right back at you, what would you say is your biggest strengths and where did you have to work?
I think the biggest strength that I quite naturally had was more in the leadership area. The entrepreneurship, I was always curious, always, fairly creative, I would say. But the entrepreneurship part was certainly something that, like a muscle, I had to train to. I was never as visionary, if you will, as other people that came up with these really incredible ideas that I was just slower to really truly understand. I think that I was always good at capturing certain or understanding certain ideas and then really capturing them and bringing them to market. The management part I never really liked until today. I don't really enjoy, but it's something that you have to do, I guess.
It's a must.
Because yes, you have to lead and you have to manage yourself first, just like you said, you need to get organized. Don't know if I would not be the best example of somebody. Let's talk about our productivity and what system do you use, etc. I think I'm fairly productive, fairly structured, but I don't have this system that others could copy. And I also don't really believe in those kind of descriptions. So I manage myself quite well. I manage my life quite well because as a single dad, etc., I need to be fairly structured throughout my day. I don't like to micromanage people. So I just do not enjoy it. Also, people usually do not enjoy it, but also following up, etc. I'd love to just talk to people and say, okay, this is what needs to get done. You're responsible for this. You're for this. You're for this. I really need to improve on that part to really follow up the accountability part, etc. So that's quite a bit to learn, or not to learn, but that's somebody or something where it would be good to have a complementary somebody there to help me with those things. In the framework that I proposed, I think I'm fairly good at being the salesperson or fulfilling that sales role once I'm in the room. So I'm meaning person-to-person sales. There I'm fairly strong. Also, I can be on stage. It's not really hard for me. It's also not that I really crave it. Where I usually come from is being the product person. So the understanding what the market needs, translating that into tech. I can talk tech. I cannot do tech. So I've 25 years ago, I've developed a little bit of PHP things. So I can read a bit of code, but I'm just lousy. So I'm definitely
but
not.
You understand code.
That I understand. Yeah, I was a IT administrator in the past, so I know how computers work and those things. So it's not like it's very foreign to me. But I never really, I just wasn't good enough. Maybe I'm also not, or I had my strength in other parts. So the core probably being the product guy, I really developed into that salesperson role. The tech part, I can talk tech. Also being a product guy, you need to talk tech. I cannot really do tech. Maybe that will shift a little bit through vibe coding, etc. To be honest, I'm here and there. I have AI develop things for me, like small like add-ons, browser add-ons, something like that. I like that part, or just small scripts, etc. That's something, and I can totally read that. But I will not become the big coder anymore in my life. So so that's where I see myself. So let's talk about now hiring a co-founder. I definitely like to work with someone that takes over more of the management part. So speaking in your roles again, somebody that is just really that has that ability to be down there and actually likes to work the machine, if you will, to operate the machine.
There are people who actually enjoy the role. There are people who just love doing that. That's not me, that's not you, but there are people who love doing that. And
it's easier to find them. It's easier to find those.
Okay.
So because I think you have less entrepreneurial talent or like natural entrepreneurial talent and more management talent. Management talent is somehow it's for people that are really organized, really structured, are really well have everything mapped out. This is the process. This is how we do it. This is how you. This is you follow the rules. It's looking at efficiency. Entrepreneurship or this entrepreneurial mindset is really looking at effectiveness. So it's really looking at what needs to be done, what should we work on, how should we position ourselves in the market, and the management part is then how to really execute that well and to make the whole thing efficient. But it's more running the machine. The entrepreneurship is more designing it and thinking about should we have this machine at all, but not that much thinking about the details, how to execute that. And you need both to have a good business.
Machine.
In the beginning, in the beginning, you need this entrepreneurial part more. Later on, and that's why a lot of entrepreneurs also are really good at starting up. And then when a certain size comes, then it's 80% entrepreneurship and okay, what should we work on and what is the right? How do we solve this problem well? What does the market need? Once you have product market fit, it's 80% management.
Yeah.
So it really.
So I always say that in the beginning, the limit is you and how good you are as an entrepreneur, how good you are in building relationships, in finding the problem to solve, in devising the right solution. The next limit then becomes your processes, your systems. So that's where the management comes in. And then the third limit is flexibility, because the market shifts and you might need to change, right? And how flexible you are. I remember the story about Intel and Andy Grove, where they had this situation where they were losing, I believe, the memory chips business from Asia. And then they had a very tough call to make and they just made it. They pivoted. But that was very, very hard to actually do because they had been in the memory business for so long. And then they had to change. They went into the micro processors, if I'm not wrong. And that's where Intel is now. So that whole progress, that whole ability to be able to change your skin and to be able to change what you do is very, very crucial. And I believe it gets harder the longer you actually spend in business, because you tend to get into a comfort zone. You do things in a certain way. Those actually work out well. And then it's hard to actually shift if the market changes. But the market is always changing. So do you also see that founders or co-founders need to have a shared value system or shared values? Do you think this is the case? And if yes, how do you measure in terms of values?
Okay, then we get into the whole area. Co-founder is just like a marriage, to be honest. It has certain similarities because you are doing this both or all of the co-founders, if it's 3 or 4. If they have shares, it's not as easy to break up, right? It's actually fairly hard. It's not like an employee. You get someone on, and then if it doesn't work out, you just say bye, because you build something up, you have shares there, etc. You don't want a person to just leave the company but still just be a shareholder. I mean, it's a setup that's totally possible. It really depends on the stage. Certainly, you don't want that in the early stages. And if you are planning to do this for a longer period of time, aligned values, just like in a marriage, is the core of everything. Why? Because you really need to be willing and need to be able to spend time together, and that's much easier if you actually of course, kind of like the other person. That doesn't need to be a very strong affection, just like in a marriage. If you are just really, okay, I like to spend time with this person. It's a good person and I enjoy the company. But even more so, you don't want everything to be codified. You need a certain way of, okay, we align in terms of values. And if I say I do something, I do that. I expect that from the other person. I can anticipate behavior of the other person because we share the values. I can trust the other person, just like you would in a marriage, you don't know where your wife is right now, but you trust that you're very likely, you know, how her behavior is going to be, what she's going to do, etc. And that element where you don't need control, but just trust is super important to keep things very fast and to keep the complexity very, very low. And that's why aligned values, is one of the key features of that. The hard part is, how do you find out whether the other person has those values? It's not that easy, right? And that's, I think, the important thing, because skills are fairly not easy but
to
fairly
measure.
Quickly you understand if you have the right skills. But values is something you just discover over time. And you just need time. That's why usually when somebody comes in an investment scenario, you also have these vesting cases. So you then vest. What does vesting mean? Just quickly for those that don't know, that over time, so everybody gets a certain amount of shares, but if you leave the company early, then you have to return a certain amount of shares. And usually that vesting, now another term in that investment world, comes with a cliff. So if you leave in the first year, you don't get any shares.
You get nothing.
Yeah. So there are different scenarios, but those are not important for now.
The topic.
But you don't get anything because it just didn't work out. Right. And then you just separate ways. If you have a well-aligned co-founder partnership, then even if you are beyond that, if both sides, or like all three sides or whatever, look at each other and say, hey, this isn't working out anymore, but you have aligned values, then often you can find a way to break up in a peaceful, settled way that everybody agrees with. That's the ideal case. Why do most companies fail? Because of co-founder issues.
Disagreements.
Because things are not aligned. There's conflict. It's often about status, power, money, those things. Egos are just hurt, and then things just fall apart. That's probably one of the most important things. So skill, you can really find out in the first, let's say, even a week. You know, does the other have certain skills? Does the other not have certain skills? Or the potential for a certain skills. Values, you need a few months to really figure out. You won't have you won't really know until hardship comes your way. So you need hardship first, and then you'll find out what the true values are. Right? What is the other person really going to sacrifice? Or what is the other person not going to sacrifice? And if all sides are really pulling through and going through a hard time together, and they come out good at the other side, that's a pretty good foundation, I think. Yeah. What do you think?
No, I fully agree. So I think that people need to be aligned. So it's values, definitely. I think also purpose is very, very important. So co-founders need to have a shared purpose. So why are they doing things? If, for example, if my purpose would be money and your purpose would be doing good in the world, then your purpose takes longer. Mine could take shorter, right? But since your purpose takes longer, I'm not getting money in the meantime. That means that my purpose diverges from yours very, very quickly. So that would lead to conflict. That would lead to problems. And it's not always that the purpose is diverging from the start. It could happen that the purposes change because people change. So our priorities change. And what we want out of the relationship, whatever kind of relationship that is, that also can evolve. So I think it's important to have a constant communication within partners, within business partners. That's very, very important, very, very crucial. And to just speak out things like, what do you want now? How do you see this going? How can we improve this going forward? And then you can kind of understand if purposes are diverging and if you need to change anything along the way. Because I've been in such a relationship for 4 years. We've been through hardships. You know that very well because you also know the guy. And it was going quite well. But I believe at some point the purposes diverged. So for me, it has always been the journey. So I've also been somewhat negative towards myself in the sense that if something could make the whole journey easier, but felt like cheating, for example, we had this option in the first 3-4 months to join this well-established Italian company right away. And to me, it felt that it was cheating because we didn't build anything. It was just that they needed us, so they would get the whole company in. And I said no. So it was not a shared decision. I said no because I had set the journey to actually build something on my own, maybe for the main reason to prove to myself that I could actually do it. And that would not mean proving that to myself, right? So I've said no quite a few times along the way to deals that were okayish, let's put it this way, but that kind of felt like cheating. So for me, the journey was the most important thing. Even if that meant that we were not making tons of money, and we weren't in the first few years, you know that. But the journey was actually the most important part. And I believe that was shared in the first couple of years. And then what shifted was that in his side, money became more important. In my side, the journey kept being the same, like the most important one. And that happened. And then when that happens, it just makes sense to have a very straight conversation as we did. And you know that very, very well. In our case, we shared values because everything was resolved very swiftly, very quickly, very painlessly. So, and yeah, I believe making sure that the direction that you're headed is similar or you see it in the same way is maybe the most important part. I'm not sure what do you think of this?
No, I absolutely agree. So it's the thing that this purpose, I would maybe rephrase that a little bit into priorities.
Okay.
That priorities just really can shift, and that's totally fine. Family comes there. You have kids, or you want to have kids. You're planning that. Then the one has security, safety needs. I need more money. I need more stability. Whatever. The other person is still on this entrepreneurial. Let's go and let's conquer the world and build something big and delayed gratification. And let's really have little money right now, but build something, and then later in 5 years or so, we hopefully have something bigger. So that can really shift. I really applaud you guys to have solved this well. That means that a lot of the foundation has actually been good. And let's also honor that. And that's because relationships, they start and they may end, and that's totally fine, right? But how you started, how you have the journey together, how you end it, that's in the end what actually matters. And that shows character, that shows certain personality traits that I think are really helpful. Important is, that's my lesson. You don't know whether it's going to work out or whether it's not going to work out. So it's really something that you cannot guarantee.
You cannot predict.
If you choose, yes, you cannot really predict. But if you choose wisely, you can reduce the chance of things going bad. It's one of the most important things you actually decide on, and really take your time. All sides, right? Take your time. Do I want this? And do I want this with this or these people together? And that, I think that makes a ton of sense to actually have it. And once you have that, I think it's good. And we actually did it end of last year also, to just say, hey, how is our partnership going? Right? I think it's very healthy that we should even do in our marriages more often. I don't know if you do that.
I don't know.
It's a hard conversation, to be honest, because it's a moment of truth, but it's a very healthy one. I really like that, to be honest, to just have a conversation like that, to reflect on, okay, how are things actually going? What am I contributing? How do I feel in this relationship? What do I feel uncomfortable with? What would I change, or what I would love to have changed? And in that honest conversation, it does the opposite as what you actually fear. Of course, we all fear like this from people that we like, this bad feedback, or this like our criticisms.
They don't like me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, somebody's criticizing me. We all fear that. But if you really open up, and if you go into that conversation head on, it can actually be a fruitful conversation, because you can see, yeah, okay, it's true. I'm kind of lacking there. Maybe I slacked a little bit and didn't really bring enough to this partnership. And that's in business partnership the same as in personal partnerships or relationships. I totally think so. So that's maybe we should give this a good kind of word, like a snappy, we should coin a term there. But I think that's actually worth sharing. because we did it for the first time last year. I haven't done it with anyone before. In a business context like that, we had 360 degrees feedback sessions, etc. But not like, okay, we are partners here, business partners. Let's look at the relationship, and we should do that every year. I think, and I think it's so healthy that I think others should do the same thing.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it's, I mean, you have to have these spots to just talk to each other. And because sometimes you might have a few thoughts along the way and you don't share them, and then those accumulate. And what happens is that you get the big bang. It blasts, and the whole relationship gets blown away, which doesn't make any sense. Communication is key. So maybe let's maybe dive a bit deeper into conflict. And there are, the way how I see it, and I refer this to a book by Adam Grant. I think the name of the book was Think Again, if I'm not wrong. And Adam is, I think, an organizational psychologist, if I'm not wrong. And Adam defines conflict in two ways. He calls one kind of conflict task conflict, and the second kind of conflict personal conflict. So task conflict meaning we are devising a brand, let's assume, and you say, oh, I don't like the font, or I don't like the colors because of this and that. And then we have a conflict because I might like that. But that's a task conflict. It's not personal. It's not that you don't like me or whatever I'm saying. It's that we differ in opinions in terms of a certain context. And Adam, for example, this kind of conflict calls it very, very healthy, because he says if you lack conflict, especially in co-founders or in this kind of context, that's not harmony. That's apathy. That means that nobody cares enough to actually share their opinion and to actually diverge in terms of opinions. What happens very, very usually is that from task conflict, it's super easy to go and to transfer into personal conflict, right? So you say, I don't like the colors, and I tell you, oh, but you're always like this, right? So that shifts very, very quickly. And we need the first. And I believe you also agree that's super important. We don't need a second at all. How can we make sure how should co-founders make sure to have the first without transitioning to the second?
So that's a super interesting topic. I like to look at this from a let's say, or let's I'm going to take a different angle here. I think both conflicts are needed. You just said the personal conflict you don't need. Let me get to that point in a second. The conflict, the task conflict, as he calls it, is very fact-based, is necessary. It's really, really clear. So have that conflict, and I want the color yellow. No, I want the color red. Let's discuss. Hopefully the best argument wins in the end, maybe a compromise. It's orange. I don't know. Whatever, right? So if you have personal conflicts, that says a lot about an underlying thing. That is, if you have the iceberg model, the task conflict is the easy one to actually talk about, but it's only 10%. And the 90% of frustration, of whatever, is hidden. And why I think that this personal conflict is important, because it bubbles up something that was not said. And we need if things are too long unsaid, then we need to say them, or we need to let go. But if they just linger, that's not good. That's why I think both are important. The one is really factual. Okay, let's solve this, yellow or red, fine. The other is, okay, we have an issue. Let's talk. Let's not talk about the accusation. You always say this. You always do this. You always whatever. We know these kind of patterns from our personal relationships with a partner or good friends. You always do. You never, right? These things.
Violent communication.
These sayings are good cues. Always, you never are good cues for something is up. It's not clear whether really the other person did something wrong, or I'm just misinterpreting it, or just saying something. So, but something is there which is good to actually talk about. And what is very helpful, you just said it, is the nonviolent communication framework, Rosenberg. It's just really, really good to think about it. Yeah. Why? because often we are not aware of what we say, how it comes across. Often the intention, you never do this, is not actually to hurt someone. It is maybe just a lazy way of phrasing something and just saying it in an unaware way and not really meaning it in that sense. But getting the feedback, hey, listen, why don't we just phrase it differently? Starts a process, and there is the nonviolent communication is just really, really good. It starts a process of being aware, how do I phrase certain things, and that eases a lot of relationship issues. Relationship issues are usually, what I found, 95%, probably more, communication issues. If we change the communication, we change the relationship. That doesn't mean we are in big, big love all the time. It just means that conflicts are much easier to actually solve.
You need clarity.
But clarity not in a way clarity. Clarity often is also associated with just directness, just candor, right?
You can be polite and clear, right? So you don't need to be
exactly. But I think that's the right kind of phrasing. You also need to have a certain politeness. If you look at different cultures, they have a very different form or perception of what polite actually means. I remember very, very well where I was consulting a big Japanese company back in the day.
Okay.
In that company, the German way of being polite.
Yeah.
The German way is fairly straightforward.
I know.
There's I don't know. It's just, hey, this is it. This is it.
It's the same with the Albanian way. So it's very
everybody
it's very
agrees that this is it, and this is
yeah.
This is what true. It is. But true doesn't mean that it comes across right. It often comes across impolite. And in this Japanese company, you would never get a no. The strongest, because they would just never say no. The strongest you would get, and that was a clear no, was, my strong advice is.
My strong advice.
Yeah, that's a strong advice. It's a clear, this is a clear no, get the hell out of here. It's a no, right? That's my strong advice is. So you really need to read between the lines what this other person means. Just regarding these personal things. But let's get back to founder conflict. One tool we just said, if you have regular check-in once a year, being kind of regular,
even more
but
often.
It's kind of lengthy. But if you would have it more often, just to say, hey, are we good? Everything fine? Anything we haven't spoken about in the last months? Should we speak about something? Any question you have that you don't dare ask? Anything that needs to be said that hasn't been said? This kind of conversation can just be a 5-minute thing, and then maybe the other says, yeah, let's have a conversation again. Let's schedule a longer talk, because I think we need to have a conversation again, and not in terms of this is bad or like everything is in scrambles, but just then let's have a check-in again. Let's talk about it again, or where we stand, etc. So I think if you get that communication right, you are on a really, really good path. It's the same with the marriage. In marriage, what I always advise is to have a date night, because often when kids are involved or very, very busy jobs, you don't have these moments where you really are looking at each other. You just kind of live with each other. It's a different notice the other. You come into the door, say, hi, I'm back, and here are the kids, and here that I'm going to do sports or whatever it is. But you spend time together, but you don't have that looking at each other time, for the lack of a better word, where you really, this time I spent with you, and I'm aware of you, and I give us space. So, and I think the same is important for co-founders as well. Usually I do sales, you do tech, whatever it is, whatever the split is.
Yeah.
I do CEO things, you do COO things. And then you have this split, and you just have check-ins with whatever the dailies, weeklies, whatever it is. And you just talk tasks, you just talk results and those things. Then the lubricant, the oil in that relationship is going to slowly go away, and then friction much easier friction starts. So it's not a waste of time to do these check-ins. It's very healthy because you don't have the long form, what you said before, these bam consequences. Then all of a sudden it's just
the big bang.
You get into a conflict that you cannot really get out anymore. So you don't want to happen. Keep the conversation going.
Yeah. So something that I think everyone should do, and I've done it almost always in every venture I've started, is clarify the roles. That's very, very important. Because what happens very often is that you will diverge in opinions, you will diverge in direction, and that will lead into conflict. For example, there are a few setups where companies have co-CEOs, which might make sense. I don't understand how that could make any sense, for example, when you are starting out, because you are just starting out and you will diverge in opinion, and then who will decide where to go? So you have to have clarity, at least from how I see it, in terms of direction. So who is the person who takes the technical decision? That's this guy or this girl. Fine, that's settled. Right or wrong, she or he is the person who takes that. Who is the person who defines where to go? Who holds a vision? That's a guy, that's a girl. They will do it. If you clearly define the roles, and then you have to have what you also mentioned earlier, trust in each other to actually do the best job possible, then that's also a way to minimize the friction. From my experience, friction usually happens when you have diverse opinions in how to do something and when people overlap in roles. For example, we've had with my first co-founder friction for technical stuff because we both had a technical background. So we had diverse opinions. At some point, I believe after 2-3 months, we said, okay, I will lead the company and you will lead the technical side. So we won't question each other. So it's your decision, take it for both ends. And then that's what made us go along for 4 years and something. And I think that's very, very important.
That's a extremely important point. I very much believe in the single responsible person kind of
single responsibility principle.
Yeah. So you have one person that is just responsible for this and this and this, and another is responsible for this. And that means really owning it, and also especially owning the outcome. So if something is not right, you are responsible. What you don't want is finger pointing. No, I thought you. No, you don't want that. You are responsible for that, and that's fine. What does that mean? If somebody is responsible, that person needs to be able and needs to be allowed to take that final decision, because that person is, in the end, responsible for the outcome. That does not mean that other people cannot give their input, their advice, their whatever, and raise a flag and say, hey, I think we're going into the wrong direction. This is the argument. Because in the end, what I think, the best arguments should actually win. If that single responsible person is actually really owning the outcome and sees, hey, this is a good idea, I should incorporate it, this person is going to incorporate it, because it's a very, let's say, outcome, results-driven, content-driven kind of thinking. If it's a status culture, then it might be that it's not something I proposed. I don't like this person, or I need to show that I know it better. And then because of status, of saying I'm going to reject an actually good idea and just say, no, I'm going to do my idea. That's something that you often see in corporate settings. But that's a culture thing, that in corporate settings, often status, job titles, etc., the rank, the hierarchies are what defines I am something. But that's because there is a lack of purpose often, because people in bigger structures, they don't know what they're doing it for. And then you have this accounting, I don't know, whatever subsection, but I'm the head of this team then, but I know that accounting does this, but why exactly? No, my purpose is I need to get up the hierarchy to show I am someone. And if hierarchy or internal status games become more important than the purpose, you really have a cultural issue. So luckily, we have smaller companies. We don't have that. We have a lot of influence. I will always go against status games, because they will be, every time, they'll be suboptimal from the whole perspective. Status games always have local optimums, So for a certain people,
Okay.
but they are not optimizing for the whole company. If you want to optimize for the whole company, you are actually organizing for what problem are we solving, and to solve that in the best possible way. And somebody, the customers, being willing to pay money, and maybe in the future, hopefully, more money, and you structuring it in such a way that you end up with margins in the end, and you have profits. If you have profits, then you can go on and continue what you're actually doing. So you don't want status games kill a company. I'm very kind of firm on that. So you don't want to have those.
So with status games, you also mean like in office politics, right?
Yeah, all those things where not the customer problem and the customer value proposition lead, but where we do things because we have a sense of gaining power. Gaining power can be a lot of things in a corporate setting, right? Gaining
Position,
influence,
status,
gaining
money.
something. But does that really help the customer? If it's a no, and you just take a decision because of internal kind of games, then it's a red flag. Even if it's small ones, you really need to take into account of why are we actually doing this? Does that in the long term help our customer? If it doesn't, rather stop it right away before it starts to grow, just like a cancer, and all of a sudden.
Great advice.
Because from a certain point on, certain size especially, you cannot influence culture anymore. So if you have 100, 150 people, you can just say, hey, we want to be different. But the people are going to go their own way. Yeah. So what you have to do then, you have to change the management. You have to take out, because if you, founder, are still in control, and you see something is happening in other departments where you don't have that much influence on anymore, because it got to 150, 200 people, then you either these leaders are going to change, or you're going to take out leadership, bring in new leadership, and then things are going to change. Absolutely. But you need those leaders that are really not status driven, but maybe purpose driven or content driven. Like we want to deliver a good solution and not play status games.
We can maybe touch upon culture next time. It's a great topic to also have. Last thing, maybe on that co-founder conflict, something that I've started doing from last year is I keep these notes, diaries, call it whatever, where I see every relationship as a bank. So I have a debit and I have a credit. And I always put what's the debit and what's the credit to also understand what has gone wrong maybe in a certain relationship, but also in current relationships. And that kind of helps me visualize maybe in a more understandable way what I'm doing wrong or what I feel other people are doing wrong. And I think if someone would do this also in the context of a co-founder, then you can keep track much easily of what's going on. And then when you have those conversations every 6 months or every end of the year, whatever the frequency is, then you don't actually forget. And it's not a perception game. It's something that you have understood, you have perceived it maybe, but you have also written down. So that makes it more tangible, because you can also provide concrete examples. I'm not sure if you also do something like that, but I found that very, very helpful. Also to understand past relationships, like where did it go wrong? What did I do wrong to actually get this result, and what can I do better to avoid the result going forward?
So this concept of a favor bank, if you will, I have this since quite a long time. So who is doing who favors? And from Pirate Summit, we have this house rule: give, ask. To give first, maybe even give more. 49-51 rule: just give a little bit more, so you are not in debt to someone else with certain favors, whatever it is. I think the concept is a really good mental model. I haven't written it down, to be honest. Very interesting to hear that you do that. So I haven't really codified it. I'm not good at writing things down, to be honest. So I don't have a journal. I tried it a little bit, didn't really work. Was not really mine. I see a lot of value in it, though.
There's tons of value.
For me, it wasn't something that I could regularly do. I just didn't get into the habit of it, or maybe I'm also not that person that has these kinds of habits. But the mental model I absolutely like. There's a lot of truth to it. We all know it. We feel a little bit indebted, like, okay, I've done too much here, or no, not too much, but I've done not enough here. With too much, I'm not. So that's not my issue. So I love to give more, and it's totally fine. I can also quickly forget. I don't really expect anything in a return. But that's maybe my kind of mindset. If I give someone something, so if it's a business relationship and we really say, all right, you do this, I do this, it's clear, like, okay, you need to hold up this thing that you said you are going to do. But if I help someone out, so I give a lot of intros. People come to me because I have a fairly big network. They come to me and they ask me, hey, can you do an intro here? Can you do an intro there, etc. I just do the intro and then I just move on. I will probably have a day later, I would have totally forgotten that I did an intro. Right. So I don't feel like somebody owes me something. But if something comes back because I did intros and people say, okay, I'm going to help you out now, that's totally fine. So I don't have that kind of favor bank, but I don't really like to be indebted to someone else.
I see the favor bank more in the terms of what I take than what I give. In the sense that I don't really mind giving. I think that's super, super helpful. But I need to be able to understand what I've taken, right? Or what I feel the other person has taken as well. That's also very, very important. Because if I'm going to have a clear communication, for example, together, we haven't had any big issues yet. If we are to have that conversation, I have to provide clarity. I can't just say, hey, you're a bad person. I have to actually give examples of why I think what I think. And that's why keeping notes usually helps. And again, it's more a reflection of how to better myself rather than how to, keep track of what I've given, what I've done, so that I can ask more in return. That doesn't really make any sense to me. So yeah. But journaling, for example, I've also done that for a few months. I also can't keep doing that for long. Also having 2 young kids, you know how it is. It's almost World War III, so it's
do you write
very chaotic.
by hand, or do you use a laptop or something?
I use a stylus. I have a Samsung S24, and I've used the journaling app there, and the stylus kind of helps because you still write by hand. You don't write in a paper, because I would certainly lose the notebook or the paper. So having such a phone usually helps, because it still gives you that feeling that you're writing down, and it's still digital, so it doesn't get lost. So that's a great phone to have. I'm doing some marketing now for a product, but I've seen that it has helped also my productivity in this sense, because it gives that feeling of writing in a paper. So nice. I think we covered the topic of co-founders quite extensively, actually.
Yeah, there are more things we could go into, and maybe we have some kind of we can get some feedback. So if you listen to this, have questions, just post something underneath, and we'll gladly try to answer. And maybe if there are bigger topics there, then we gladly also do that in one of the next episodes.
For everyone who is listening, you'll be able to find my LinkedIn profile, Manuel's LinkedIn profile. We're also considering to start a Telegram group, so that link will also be in the description of all our episodes. And then you can join. You can ask questions either to our specific profiles or to the group. We also have, I think, personal websites as well, so those links will be there. You can reach out to us in whichever way you find you. Thank you, Manuel. I think this was a great episode. Thanks a lot for the insights. It was great as usual. And I'll see you next week.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Have a good one. Cheers.